If you've ever been betrayed by family, please hit that like button. I'd love to know in the comments which country you're watching from. This is the story of how I faced the greatest betrayal of my life and how I turned it into the most empowering moment of my journey. My name is Sophia, and I'm 32 years old. I was born into the Riley family, owners of one of the most successful luxury hotel chains on the East Coast. I was standing in the bridal suite, putting the finishing touches on my wedding day look. My phone chimed with a new message. The sender was my mother. Don't expect anyone to show. Those 6 words shattered my wedding day dreams in an instant. Panicking, I quickly checked social media. What I found there took my breath away. It was a group photo of my entire family on a private beach in Maui. My parents stood front and center, smiling broadly. My older brother Trevor and his wife Jessica were beside them. All my aunts, uncles, and cousins were arranged around them. They held cocktails in their hands, wearing sunglasses, without a care in the world. The post caption read, "Finally together. The annual Riley family vacation has officially begun." The timestamp showed 11 a.m. Eastern Time. That meant they had taken this photo around 5 or 6 in the morning Hawaii time. They had calculated the exact time I would be putting on my wedding dress. They posted this photo specifically to hurt me at my most vulnerable and hopeful moment. When I zoomed in on the photo, I noticed something in the background. A banner on a nearby cabana read, "Riley Family Retreat 2023. I checked the resort's website. This was the inaugural event, booked 4 months ago. That was 2 weeks after I had sent out my save the date cards. This trip wasn't just an annual event. It was their final declaration of rejection. They refused to accept Eric, an outsider, as family. It was a calculated psychological attack designed to show me exactly who the real Riley family was. Let me explain how we got to this devastating moment. In the Riley family, my brother Trevor was pampered as the future heir. Meanwhile, I was held to impossibly high standards. When I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard and earned my MBA in hospitality management, my father barely nodded. When Trevor barely graduated from a third-tier university after 6 years, there were grand celebrations. After joining the family business, I did the actual work while Trevor held the fancy title of vice president. I saved the company from disaster 3 separate times. First, Trevor approved a suspiciously low contractor bid without checking credentials. 2 days before construction was set to begin, I discovered the company was a shell corporation with numerous complaints. I spent 3 sleepless nights finding reputable contractors. I saved the company from potential lawsuits and reputation damage. Second, Trevor slashed luxury suite prices across all properties during peak season. He didn't consult the revenue management team. This devalued our brand and actually decreased overall revenue. I created a detailed analysis showing the negative impact. I proposed a new dynamic pricing model that ultimately increased our revenue by 23%. Third, and most critically, Trevor nearly lost our newest Miami property to zoning violations. He had ignored multiple warning letters about compliance problems. I learned about the situation just 72 hours before the city would shut us down. I flew to Miami immediately. I spent 2 days and nights working with local officials. I secured the necessary permits just hours before the deadline. Each time, my father acknowledged my contributions with reluctant, passing comments. Meanwhile, he continued praising Trevor in management meetings and family gatherings. That's when I met Eric Thompson. Unlike the privileged men in our social circle, Eric came from a middle-class family in Philadelphia. He had worked his way through college with night and weekend jobs. He built a successful career as an architectural engineer through his own efforts. When his firm was hired to consult on one of our hotel renovation projects, we met and connected immediately. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and appreciated. Eric valued my intelligence and determination. He supported my ambitions. My family's reaction was predictably awful. My mother called him a gold digger. My father dismissed him as not our kind of people. Trevor openly mocked Eric's modest background at family dinners. He made crude jokes about Eric's public school education. When Eric proposed with his grandmother's vintage diamond ring, my family's response was explosive. My mother burst into tears of disappointment, not joy. My father slammed his fist on the table. He declared he would never attend any wedding to that gold digger. Trevor laughed and asked if Eric could even afford a real diamond. When I showed them my ring, a beautiful but modest diamond that had belonged to Eric's grandmother, my mother scoffed. She said, "I'm embarrassed you would wear such a tiny stone." Despite the disastrous engagement announcement, I still sent formal wedding invitations to every family member. Eric questioned whether this was setting me up for more disappointment, but I insisted on giving them one last chance to do the right thing. The 6 months of wedding preparation became a masterclass in passive-aggressive sabotage. My mother declined to go dress shopping with me. She claimed a scheduling conflict with her tennis lesson. When I sent her photos of 3 final dress contenders, her only response was a brief text. "The third one makes your shoulders look wide." I invited my parents to the menu tasting, hoping food might be neutral territory. My father said he had an important business meeting. I later discovered he had been golfing that day. My mother initially agreed to come but canceled an hour before, citing a migraine. Trevor and his wife Jessica were equally evasive. They turned down every invitation to participate in wedding preparations with increasingly flimsy excuses. When I asked Trevor to be a groomsman, he laughed and said, "I don't think Eric wants me there, sis. We're not exactly buddies." Even my extended family seemed to be keeping their distance. Aunt Laura, who had always been kinder to me than my parents, declined to attend my bridal shower. She claimed a prior commitment. Uncle Robert, my father's brother and company co-partner, responded to the wedding invitation with a non-committal, "We'll try our best to make it." 2 weeks before the wedding, my family members became unusually difficult to reach. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts received delayed, one-word responses. Emails about last-minute wedding details went unanswered. 1 week before the wedding, I stopped by my parents' house unannounced. The housekeeper seemed uncomfortable when I asked where they had gone. She eventually admitted they had left that morning with several suitcases, but they hadn't shared their destination with the staff. My calls to Trevor went straight to voicemail. His wife Jessica posted on social media about a much-needed break from Boston, but she didn't specify where they were headed. The night before my wedding, I made one last attempt to reach my family. I called every number. I sent heartfelt messages expressing how much their presence would mean to me. No responses came. October arrived with a perfect autumn day. Crisp air and vibrant fall foliage were visible through the hotel room windows. My maid of honor, Amy, arrived at 7:30 with coffee and pastries. The hairstylist and makeup artist followed shortly after. The bridal suite filled with cheerful wedding day preparations. "Has anyone from your family called?" Amy asked quietly while the makeup artist was setting up. "Not yet," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But it's still early." By 10 o'clock, my hair was styled in soft waves with small white flowers woven through. My makeup was complete, natural looking but designed to last through tears and kisses. The photographer arrived to capture getting ready moments. I forced myself to smile as if everything was perfect. At 11:15, as I was stepping into my wedding dress, my phone chimed with a message. The vintage-inspired lace gown had delicate beading throughout. My heart leaped with hope when I saw my mother's name on the screen. That hope crashed within seconds. Don't expect anyone to show. No explanation. No apology. Just a cold statement delivered hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. Shaken, I made one final confirmation call to every family member. My father, Trevor, aunts, uncles, cousins, all went straight to voicemail or were turned off. It was like a perfectly orchestrated silence. In desperation, I checked my family's social media accounts with trembling fingers. That's when I found the devastating post I described earlier. The photo of my entire family on that pristine Hawaiian beach, posted at the exact moment they knew I would be at my most vulnerable. The physical pain in my chest was so intense I thought I might be having a heart attack. This wasn't just an absence. This wasn't just missing my wedding. This was a deliberate, coordinated act designed to hurt me as deeply as possible. "The ceremony starts in an hour," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "We should finish getting ready. Are you sure you want to go through with this today?" Amy asked gently. "No one would blame you if you wanted to postpone." I looked at my reflection in the mirror, at the bride I had become despite my family's absence. Absolutely. I'm marrying the man I love today. Their absence just confirms I'm making the right choice. In that moment, something crystallized inside me. The last lingering hope that my family might eventually accept my choices died completely. In its place grew something much stronger. In its place grew an ice-cold, crystal clear understanding of who they truly were and what I needed to do next. The wedding venue had painfully obvious empty seats where my family should have been sitting. Friends had spread out to make the absence less noticeable, but nothing could hide the stark reality that not a single blood relative had come to witness my marriage. What was strange was that none of my longtime colleagues from the company had shown up either. I had worked closely with several of them for years. I had sent them invitations too. The traditional wedding march began to play. All the guests rose and turned to watch my entrance. For a moment, I faltered. In all my wedding dreams, my father had been beside me, ready to walk me down the aisle. Now I stood alone. Then I saw Eric waiting at the altar. His eyes found mine with such love and concern that my momentary hesitation vanished. I began walking with my head held high. Alone, yes, but moving toward the family I was choosing to create. Halfway down the aisle, Amy's father stepped out from his seat and offered me his arm. "May I have the honor?" he whispered. I accepted gratefully. This simple act of kindness nearly brought me to tears again. The ceremony itself was beautiful in its simplicity. Eric and I had written our own vows. They were promises not just of love, but of partnership, respect, and unwavering support. As we exchanged rings, I felt a weight lifting. The family that had refused to witness this moment no longer held power over my happiness. During the reception, many guests tactfully avoided mentioning my family's absence, though I caught whispers and concerned glances. When it came time for speeches, I knew I had to address the elephant in the room. I took the microphone and looked out at the gathered friends who had become my true family. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate with Eric and me. Your presence means more than you can possibly know. Love is a choice we make every day. Today, each of you chose to support our love story. That's what family truly means. And I'm grateful to call you mine. Not a single mention of those who chose not to attend, but everyone understood. Later that night, as Eric and I returned to our hotel suite, the emotional armor I had maintained throughout the day finally cracked. I sank onto the edge of the bed, still in my wedding dress, and let the tears come. "I'm so sorry they did this to you," Eric said softly when my sobs had quieted. "You deserved better." I wiped my eyes and looked at him. This man who had stood by me despite my family's disdain, who had never once suggested I cut ties with him, even when they treated him terribly. "I'm done," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "Done hoping they'll change. Done making excuses for their behavior. Done pretending we're a normal family with normal disagreements." Eric nodded, listening intently. "They crossed a line today that can't be uncrossed," I continued. "Now I need to protect myself from them permanently." "Whatever you decide, I'm with you," Eric promised. "What are you thinking?" I stood up and began carefully removing my wedding dress. It felt symbolic of shedding the identity they had tried to force upon me for so many years. "The Riley Luxury Hotels charter lists me as a board member and partial owner," I explained. "They've always minimized my actual control. They needed my name on the paperwork for tax and inheritance purposes, but they never thought I would actually exercise those rights." Eric's eyes widened as he began to understand where I was heading. "My name is on most of the corporate accounts as well," I continued. "Another legal formality they never expected me to use. Tonight, I'm going to remove my name from the business charter, and I'm going to freeze every corporate expense account I have access to." "That's a big step, Sophia," Eric said carefully. "Are you sure?" "More sure than I've ever been about anything," I replied. "They chose to show me exactly where I stand with them. Now I'm going to show them exactly what that decision will cost." I changed into comfortable clothes and opened my laptop. Years of being underestimated had its advantages. They had never bothered to restrict my access to the company's financial and legal systems. They assumed I would never dare act against family interests. That night, while my family continued their Hawaiian vacation, I sent a series of emails to the company's legal department. I removed myself from the charter. I contacted the banks where the Riley corporate accounts were held. Using my authorized access, I placed temporary freezes on the expense accounts. I was careful to only affect discretionary spending accounts, not payroll or operations that would impact employees. This was between me and my family. not the innocent staff who depended on the hotels for their livelihood. As dawn broke on the first day of my marriage, I finally went to bed. I was exhausted but oddly at peace. The hurt was still there, a wound that would take time to heal. But I had taken back control in a way my family never anticipated. "Do you think they've realized what happened yet?" Eric asked as we curled up together. "They will soon," I said, closing my eyes. "Very soon." Instead of leaving for our planned lavish honeymoon, Eric and I decided to stay local. We rescheduled our trip to Italy for later in the year. We booked a cozy cabin in the Berkshires for a brief 3-day getaway. It was close enough to return quickly if necessary. Before leaving, I scheduled an urgent meeting with Jonathan Reed. He was a lawyer who had helped me with personal matters in the past. He had no connection to my family's legal team. "What you've done is within your rights as a named partner and account holder," Jonathan confirmed after reviewing the documents. "Removing yourself from the charter is straightforward. The account freezes are temporary by nature and affect only non-essential corporate spending. There's nothing illegal about what you've done, though I expect your family will be furious." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," I replied. Jonathan recommended I also engage a forensic accountant. She would document the full extent of my contributions to the company over the years. She would also record instances where Trevor or my father had made bad decisions. I was always the one who had to step in and fix their mistakes. "Think of it as insurance," he advised. "If they choose to pursue this legally, you'll have evidence. You can show that your actions were a reasonable response. You were minimized for years despite making essential contributions." The Berkshires cabin was exactly what we needed. A quiet, peaceful retreat surrounded by autumn foliage. It had a stone fireplace and no neighbors for miles. For 2 days, we hiked, cooked meals together, sat by the fire reading, and began to heal from the wedding day trauma. On the 3rd day, curiosity got the better of me. I checked my email. There were dozens of messages from family members, each more outraged than the last. The timestamps showed a clear progression that told the story. The first emails from early morning Hawaii time were confused inquiries. They wondered why certain credit cards were being declined at their resort. By midday, the tone had shifted to anger as they realized all their corporate cards and accounts had been frozen. By evening, communication with the company's legal department confirmed my charter removal. The messages from my family immediately became threatening. My father's email was particularly vicious. "Your childish tantrum will cost you everything. Consider yourself completely cut off. Don't ever think about coming back to the company." My mother's message was shorter, but equally biting. "I always knew you would choose that man over your family. You've made your bed, now lie in it." Trevor's email contained crude language and threats to make you regret this stunt for the rest of your life. What none of them seemed to understand was that their threats held no power over me anymore. I had already accepted the loss of my family. Their messages only confirmed I had made the right decision. I also had several missed calls from company employees. These were people I had worked with closely over the years. I returned one call to Maria, the chief financial officer, who had always treated me with respect. "It's complete chaos here, Sophia," she said when I reached her. "All vendor payments have stopped. Important business trips have been canceled entirely. Daily operational expenses can't be processed. Your father is furious and running around the office. He's threatening to fire anyone who had knowledge of your access levels. Trevor is making baseless accusations about corporate espionage. No one understands what triggered this. I hadn't imagined my actions would have such widespread impact, but I had no intention of backing down. They know exactly what triggered this," I replied calmly. "They chose to boycott my wedding and publicly flaunt their absence. Actions have consequences, for what it's worth," Maria said quietly. "Many of us wanted to attend your wedding, but your father explicitly told us that anyone who participated would be terminated immediately. I should have stood up to him, and I'm sorry I didn't. This new revelation deeply disturbed me. I hadn't considered that my family would actively prevent company employees from attending. Now the mysterious total absence of colleagues on my wedding day finally made sense. Their cruelty had even deeper layers. It's not your fault, I assured her, but you might want to update your resume. I doubt the company culture will improve anytime soon. Eric and I returned to our Boston condo the next day. We had a quiet dinner and discussed next steps. While I had no interest in returning to the family business, I needed to decide how to resolve the financial situation. Keeping the accounts frozen indefinitely would harm innocent employees and eventually the business itself. What do you want the outcome to be? Eric asked as we sat on our balcony watching the city lights. Acknowledgement, I said after some thought. Not an empty apology, but real recognition of what they did and how they've treated me for years. And I want it documented so they can't gaslight me later and claim it never happened. We decided I would give them 1 week to stew in the consequences of their actions before engaging further. In that time, I would work with Jonathan and Margaret Chen, the forensic accountant, to prepare a comprehensive proposal for resolution. The proposal would include conditions for unfreezing the accounts. It would demand formal acknowledgement of my contributions to the company. It would require financial compensation for ideas and strategies they had profited from while giving Trevor credit. And it would include a legally binding agreement that they would not interfere in my future business ventures. By the end of the week, Margaret had compiled an impressive dossier. It documented dozens of instances where my work had directly saved or earned the company millions of dollars. Jonathan had drafted the legal agreement, and I had prepared myself emotionally for what would undoubtedly be an ugly confrontation. I didn't have to wait long. Exactly 1 week after our return from the Berkshires, the doorbell rang repeatedly. This was followed by loud, angry pounding on our front door. Through the peephole, I could see my father standing in the hallway. His face was flushed deep red with anger. Behind him stood my mother, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Trevor was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. I took a deep breath, smoothed my expression into one of calm indifference, and opened the door with deliberate casualness. I raised my coffee mug to my lips and took a slow sip before speaking. Well, this is a surprise. Did you enjoy Maui? My father pushed past me into the apartment, ignoring my question entirely. What the hell do you think you're doing? He bellowed. Do you have any idea the damage you've caused? My mother and Trevor followed him in, both glaring at me with undisguised hostility. Eric emerged from our home office, alerted by the commotion. He stood quietly beside me in a show of support. I assume you're referring to the account freezes and my removal from the company charter, I said calmly. Actions that were entirely within my legal rights as a named partner. Legal rights? My father's voice rose even higher. You've crippled operations. Hotels can't process payments. Vendors aren't being paid. The executive team can't access travel funds. All because you had some petty grievance about your wedding. I set my coffee down and met his gaze directly. Petty grievance? You and the entire family deliberately scheduled a vacation to coincide with my wedding day. You posted photos specifically timed to hurt me at my most vulnerable moment. And you call that a petty grievance? We take the same family trip every year, my mother interjected. Really? Because according to the resort's website, this was the inaugural Riley family retreat. The booking was made 4 months ago, 2 weeks after I sent out save-the-date cards for my wedding. My mother had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but Trevor jumped in with his usual aggression. So what if we did? It's not like your wedding to this nobody was important to the family. You chose him over us. What did you expect? Eric stiffened beside me but remained silent, allowing me to handle the confrontation as we had discussed. What I expected was basic human decency, I replied. But clearly that was too much to ask from the Riley family. So instead, I did what you all taught me to do. I used every available resource to protect my interests. My father snorted derisively. And what exactly are your interests? You've cut yourself off from the family fortune, from your position in the company, from your inheritance. For what? To make some dramatic point, I walked to the dining table where I had placed 3 thick folders, each labeled with one of their names. I handed them out one by one. These contain detailed documentation of my contributions to Riley Luxury Hotels over the past 5 years. Specifically, instances where I directly saved the company from financial or legal disaster, most often cleaning up messes created by Trevor. Trevor flipped open his folder and his face paled as he scanned the contents. My father was slower to look, his jaw clenched in stubborn resistance. This first section, I continued, pointing to my father's folder, contains emails and meeting minutes. They show how my marketing strategy for the Miami property increased revenue by 30% year over year, despite you giving Trevor credit at the board meeting. I turned to my mother next. Your folder includes documentation of 3 occasions. I personally secured permits and approvals that saved hotel openings. This was after Trevor failed to file the proper paperwork. Events you conveniently forgot when planning the family Christmas card. The same card that praised Trevor's leadership in our expansion efforts. The room fell silent as they flipped through the meticulously organized evidence. 5 years of slights, stolen credit, and minimized contributions were all laid bare in black and white. This proves nothing, my father finally said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. It proves everything, I counted. And it's only a small sample. My lawyer has the complete files. The files include financial analysis of our project outcomes. Projects under my direct management outperformed Trevor's by an average of 42%. There's also documentation of 3 specific incidents involving Trevor's decisions. Each one would have resulted in litigation if I hadn't intervened. Trevor slammed his folder shut. This is ridiculous. You can't possibly think these little reports will hold up in court. I welcome a court case, I said with genuine pleasure. Public disclosure of these documents would make fascinating reading for our competitors, investors, and the business press. How do you think the board will react when they find out? Trevor came dangerously close to losing the Chicago property due to his negligence. My father's expression shifted from anger to calculation. The businessman in him was finally assessing the real threat I posed. What do you want? He asked flatly. An acknowledgement, recognition of my contributions, and a formal agreement that you won't interfere in my future business ventures. And the accounts? My mother asked. When will you unfreeze them? That was a calculated question. It showed practical concern for the family's reputation and daily life, not genuine interest in reconciliation. When we have a signed agreement, my mother, who had been uncharacteristically quiet for a long time, suddenly spoke up as if making casual conversation. By the way, was your wedding at least nice? It sounded like small talk, but I could see right through her. She was already thinking about how to explain this to neighbors and society friends, how to put a good spin on missing her daughter's wedding. It was beautiful, I replied coolly, filled with people who actually care about my happiness. She flinched as if I had slapped her. You should go now, Eric said, speaking for the first time since their arrival. Sophia has said what she needed to say, and you have the information you requested. My father turned his anger toward Eric. This is all because of you. She was a dutiful daughter until you poisoned her against us. I laughed. The sound was sharp and without humor. Eric has spent 2 years encouraging me to repair my relationship with you. He defended you when you didn't deserve it. If anyone poisoned our family relationship, it was you with your constant favoritism and dismissal of my contributions. My father looked as if he might argue further, but something in my expression stopped him. Perhaps he finally recognized the steel in my spine, the resolve that would no longer bend to his will. This isn't over, Trevor threatened as they moved toward the door. You're right about that, I agreed. But how it ends is now entirely up to you. As the door closed behind them, Eric wrapped his arms around me. I leaned into his embrace, exhausted but triumphant. You were magnificent, he whispered. I was terrified, I admitted, but also free. For the first time in my life, completely free of their power over me. We both knew the battle wasn't truly over. My family would consult their lawyers, look for loopholes, try to find ways to regain the upper hand. But the dynamic had fundamentally changed. I had shown them exactly what I was capable of. They would never underestimate me again. 3 days after the confrontation in our condo, Jonathan called to inform me that my family's legal team had reached out. They wanted to negotiate. After several rounds of back and forth, with attempts to water down the agreement at every turn, they finally conceded to my terms with only minor adjustments. The signed documents arrived by courier a week later. As promised, I immediately initiated the process to unfreeze the corporate accounts. I had no interest in harming employees or vendors who depended on the business. This was between me and my family, not innocent people trying to make a living. My father included a terse personal note with the documents. I still think you're making a mistake. The door remains open if you come to your senses. Typical Charles Riley. unable to admit wrongdoing even when legally forced to acknowledge it. I didn't respond. With that chapter closed, Eric and I focused on building our new life together. I declined several attractive job offers from competing hotel chains. I didn't want to appear vindictive by joining a direct competitor to the family business. Instead, I decided to forge my own path entirely. Using my settlement money and industry connections, I established Thomson Riley Consulting. We specialized in boutique and independent hotel management. Eric continued his architectural engineering work but collaborated with me on projects when appropriate. Within 6 months, we had secured contracts with 5 independent hotels. These were properties struggling to compete with larger chains. We helped them develop unique brand identities and optimize their operations. The healing process was neither quick nor linear. There were days when the pain of my family's betrayal felt as fresh as it had on my wedding day. I would find myself overwhelmed by grief for the relationship we never had and now never would. On those days, Eric would gently remind me that I had done everything possible to earn their love and respect. Their failure to give it was their loss, not mine. I began seeing Dr. Harris, a therapist who specialized in family trauma. I worked through the complex emotions of simultaneously mourning and breaking free from toxic family dynamics. The hardest part, I told her during one session, is accepting that they will never be the family I needed them to be. That no matter what I achieve, it will never be enough to make them truly see me. That acceptance is actually the beginning of freedom, she replied. When we stop expecting people to be different than they have consistently shown themselves to be, we can make choices based on reality rather than hope. Those words became a touchstone for me in the months that followed. I stopped checking my family's social media accounts. I no longer tortured myself with glimpses of gatherings I wasn't invited to. I declined the obligatory holiday invitation that arrived in November. I sent a polite but firm email explaining that I needed more time and space before considering family events. 3 months after the wedding, my mother made one attempt at reconciliation. She invited me to lunch. I agreed, curious about her intentions. The meeting was awkward, filled with superficial conversation about the weather and mutual acquaintances. When I finally asked why she had reached out, her answer was revealing. "People are asking questions about why you weren't at the last charity gala," she admitted. "It looks bad for the family image. Not because she missed me, not because she regretted her actions, but because my absence was causing gossip." I finished my coffee, thanked her for reaching out, and left without committing to further contact. Eric and I eventually took our delayed honeymoon to Italy. We spent 3 glorious weeks exploring Venice, Florence, and the Amalfi Coast. Away from Boston and all its associations, I found moments of pure joy uncomplicated by family baggage. We talked about starting our own family someday. We were both determined to break the cycle of conditional love and favoritism that had damaged me so deeply. Our business continued to thrive. Word spread in the industry about our success with independent properties. Our client list grew steadily. I discovered I had a genuine talent for hospitality consulting, perhaps even more than for direct management. The flexibility of consulting work also allowed Eric and me to travel together frequently. This strengthened our partnership in both personal and professional realms. 1 year after our wedding, we hosted a vow renewal ceremony. It was smaller and more intimate than our wedding had been. We invited only those who had truly supported our relationship from the beginning. The contrast was striking between this joyful gathering of genuine well-wishers and our wedding day. Our wedding had been surrounded by so much tension and uncertainty. That evening, as we celebrated with our chosen family of friends, I reflected on how much had changed in a single year. The woman who had once desperately sought her parents' approval now stood confident in her own worth. The relationship that my family had dismissed as inappropriate turned out to be everything they said it wasn't. It was more solid and nurturing than any relationship I had known before. The greatest lesson I learned through this painful journey was about the true nature of family. Blood relation is an accident of birth, but real family is built through consistent love, respect, and support. My parents and brothers shared my DNA, but had never truly acted as family. Eric and our close friends, who celebrated our joys and supported us through difficulties without condition or expectation, were my true family. I also learned the power of standing firm in your own truth. For years, I had allowed my family to minimize my contributions and dismiss my feelings. I was always hoping that just a little more achievement, a little more accommodation on my part, would finally earn their respect. Everything changed when I stopped seeking their approval. Instead, I demanded acknowledgement of my worth. And that's when the dynamic shifted. Setting boundaries is not selfish. Requiring respect is not unreasonable. Walking away from people who consistently hurt you, even family, is sometimes the healthiest choice you can make. Today, I no longer define myself as the daughter my parents didn't value properly. I am Sophia Thompson Riley. I'm a successful business owner, loving wife, and a woman who finally understood that the approval I sought from others had always existed within myself. If you found this story resonating with you, please let me know in the comments if you've ever had to set difficult boundaries with family. And if you know someone who needs to hear that they deserve respect and recognition, please like, subscribe, and share this video with them. Remember, your worth is not determined by those who fail to see it.